the transition of the spring coming in? Or?
Yes, sir. Yes, we do. I looked out and I saw a couple of my perennials budding, coming up, and I was like, "Oh wow, it's time for some flowers." So
Oh
I'm
wow.
excited. Excited about that, just to see some flowers. It's been so, everything's so, like we saying, concealed, which
Yeah.
is so very interesting that you could have that dirt and the flowers die off, and the whole year of just concealment, and then all of a sudden you start to see the greenery pop through the soil.
Yeah.
And then you saw I sent those pictures of the fruit trees are budding.
Mm.
So all of our fruit trees are starting to bud. And so yeah, spring is coming. You can tell it's waking up.
Well, the key thing is around what you guys are saying is beautiful. What you guys are saying is because it's like the Torah is teaching us how to see the Torah, meaning that the books that we have are teaching us how to see the Torah around us that's happening all the time, right? The seasons, everything that's happening is teaching us principles and ideas and concepts. It's not just, oh, nature's changing, It's like, no, like this, all these things mean something, right?
Yes.
Yeah, all these things mean something, and they're God communicating with us, right? When the trees are going and they're dying, and this whole thing, it's like when we're children, we don't really think so much about it, right? But when we get older, we recognize it more, and we start to see these seasons. But then we could look back on it and see that when we didn't know about it, that the seasons just, changed organically. You know what I mean? Like they just automatically went. But when we got older, we noticed it because we have working and all these things that we deal with. But the point is saying that the point is just saying that the idea is just to say that the Torah is the reality that we live in. And we learn the physical manuscripts of the Torah to be able to see the Torah that's around us. When the sun is setting, the sun's rising. That's Torah. We know what's going on. We know the connection. When we see the stars, we see the connections. When we see the new moon, the glimmer of this slither of a moon, right? We know what's going on, right? And so over here, we see this. And so when we're connecting to this concept of Purim, which is happening this week, is this idea of being able to say, like, look how much God loves us. That he gives us a whole instrument to deal with the darkest part of the year, which is the end to a new beginning. How many people in life quit right at the end? You know what I'm saying? Like right when they went through everything, this, blah, blah, and then right then, I can't take it anymore, I'm out. Wait, one more day. One more day, and the whole thing changed. Nah, I'm tired. I give up. Sorry. So we're saying, so this whole thing, Hashem gives us a Yom Tov going into the darkness, which is Hanukkah, and he gives us a Yom Tov to say, hey, one more lap, just one more rep, just get through it, one more lap, one more, and then you got it, and now you're in the spring, baby. Now the light from here, you going from here, you experiencing all the levels of the light from this point on, right? From Nisan, or really not even Nisan, once the 16th, what's the 15th of Adar, which is Purim by us. Once that happens, the trajectory is over there. Like we are out of here because we go into Nisan, which is a new moon. We go into the to the new the first of Nisan is a Rosh Hashanah. The 15th, 14th, 15th, Pesach. Then from Pesach we start the Omer. We start counting 7 weeks. Then we receive the Torah, Mount Sinai. Then we're in the month of Cheshvan. I mean, no, I'm sorry. The month of we're in the month of Sivan, and then we go into the month of Tammuz. And then Tammuz is a fast day because that's the time where we went up and received the Torah from Hashem, and we built the Egel. So it's ultimate revealment, the dark revealment, which is the beginning of a process to the Av, ninth of Av. But all these times are humongous revealments of light that were dark too, right? So we see the greatness of the light, and we see too much light could be darkness. And the same thing is could lead to greatness, but too much darkness could lead to despair. So it's just saying, so we're working through it, and we're seeing how the Torah is in conjunction with the seasons, and the seasons are in conjunction with the cosmos, and the cosmos are reflecting the light of Hashem that's coming into this world. So through the weekly parsha and what's going on in the parsha, we can understand the astrological alignments. Through the holidays, we can see that just through the weekly parsha. You don't need a calendar. What's the parsha this week? Okay, we're holding by Kitzatzev or Kitzatzev. Okay, so this is a time of concealment that God is speaking through Moshe. It's not really revealed. His name's not even in times of concealment. Okay. So we go through that. Moses passes away. Okay, boom, boom, and then we move on. So this whole thing is a system, right? And when other spiritual traditions try to compare themselves to the system, they can't do it, right? Because they take in pieces from there, pieces from there. No, no, no. This is all from God. Our calendar is in the Torah. Where's your calendar come from? Constantine. The Caliphs in Arabia. Very nice, very nice. We're holding by God. God told us when the calendar was. That's what we're holding by. He said, here's the first day, 10 days, get your lamb. You know what I mean? So anyway, so the point is just saying, so this is what we're building into. So right now, and I've been learning with OT now, I've been learning with the people out in India, and it's online, but we've been going this whole day through this whole process of understanding this development process of this process of Purim. So where we're going to start at, we're going to start after there's a clear understanding of Esther and Mordechai, and this is where the story gets juicy. This is where the controversy comes in. And that now I would suggest, because you guys have been doing all the different other days, all the different aspects of the Holocaust. This morning I started with Otina with the Suda. Okay, so if you go back on that class, whenever you have free time, you just have to play in the background. You'll see we go through the Suda and the complexities of the Suda. You'll see that up tomorrow. There's a complexity because it's not just so simple. Why do we have to have a Suda? Why is that one of the main mitzvahs? Okay, we got to eat all the time. It's suited mitzvahs. Why is this whole thing? Okay, so we're not going to that. Right now, we're in the frame of the story, which we're learning. It's a sefer called was it the Legends of the Jews, right? Which is like stories. It goes through the different time periods in the Torah. But right now, we're focusing on Legend of the Jews. So hold on. Whoa. Hold on 1 second. Just want to get it prepared. So I don't know why this happened, but gotta go exactly from where we stopped. Okay, so anyway, so you go back all the earlier classes and you'll be able to catch up, because all day has been completely immersed into this whole idea. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, so this whole day has been just for me, it's been totally immersed into this dynamic of the different aspects of the story. And okay, so here's the conspiracy. Okay, so I think you guys are familiar with the story enough without me having to do a major background. But again, there's the other classes are there for that. But either way, we're going into when the story gets juicy, right? So we already outlined the characters earlier today. The significance, Esther, Mordecai, the whole thing, the Suda, the whole thing. Okay, the conspiracy, Legend of the Jewels. He says, once the following conversation took place between Ahasuerus and Esther, the king asked Esther, whose daughter is thou? And Esther responded. So this is the thing. So we know the whole story. You guys know what's going on, okay? But now we're going into the details of this conversation that now Ahasuerus is trying to understand this mysterious woman, right? That has now entered his palace and is now the queen. He can't figure her out. So he says, she says, whose daughter is thou? She says, and Esther responds, and whose son is thou? She says, Achashverosh, I am a king. I'm the son of a king. Esther responded, I am a queen, the daughter. I'm a queen, the daughter of kings and descendants of the royal family of Shaul. He says, if thou, because you're speaking English, right? He says, if thou art needed a real prince, how? Because they put Vasti to death. So you know the story. He put his wife to death. We're not getting into that. That was last. That was an hour ago. You got to learn that. All right. So Akhesh responds. It was not. It was not my gravity of my own wishes, but it was a vice of the great prince of Persia and Media. And then Esther responds, their predecessors took no advice from the ordinary intelligence they were. So she's questioning him on the fact that he had his last wife killed, right, which is a terrible thing. He says, and he says, and they were guided by prophetic counsels of Arikot, who brought Daniel to Nebuchadnezzar, to Babylon, to summons Daniel before him. And so she was saying, she's basically questioning on this whole thing with him and his wife and how he dealt with it, taking her out. Achashverosh's response, she says, is Dardau left those tombstones morsels? Are they still prophets abroad? And Esther says, seek out and they will find. So he says, who are these people you're talking about? That was then. What about now? Who do I have? Esther says, but you need to look. The result was that Mordecai was given a position at the court once occupied by the chamberlains, Bikhad and Tars. He says, the indignant that a place once filled by senators who would be given to a barbarian outset, officials resolved to be avenged upon the king and take his life. Their purpose was to administer poison, which seemed easy to accomplish. It would seem of an easy accomplishment, as they were the royal butlers and they could find. So, as you guys don't know, when you guys go back in other classes, you'll see that the whole basis of why Ahasuerus had this big meal, right? The whole concept of the big meal was this idea of saying that there was a huge revolt against him, right? And he and his army shut that revolt down. He had 127 providences, and that revolt was shut down. And so he threw a huge party. But also within that party, he invited all the dignitaries. But one of the things also, he was celebrating the fact that the prophecy of Jeremiah wasn't seemed like it was going to happen. And he was saying, like, he is the new king. This is the new kingdom. This is a new empire. Forget about what happened. And so that was the issue by them. But his wife, who basically only became his wife because of conquest, wanted to take over. And so she was inviting in her own personal meal, she was inviting these people that were basically the wives of the men who fell in the great, who were conquered by her husband. And she was planning her own situation, right? And so the story goes is saying that so that was going on behind his back, but then he also wanted to show his power. And so he wanted her to basically do a Kanye West type thing where he, as his wife takes off his clothes. And so the point is saying that from this place is that he says, okay, so now, but there's all this internal conflict, right? And so there's people inside of his kingdom who are trying to take the Ahasuerus out, right? People want his power, right? And so there's a group of people that want to come in there and they want to poison him. The plan successfully carried out would have satisfied their vengeance, feeling that not only as to the king, but as Mordecai as well. And it would have made it appear that the death of Ahasuerus was attributed to the circumstances that he had entrusted in a person to a care of a Jew. So they're trying to set up this whole thing. And he says, and as his life had been secured under Big Han and Ceres, I don't know these names. What do you want? He says, and they discussed their plans. If it was Hebrew, I'll be able to read it. So he says, and they discussed their plans in the presence of Mordecai, acting upon the unwarranted assumption that he would not understand the language they spoke. So Mordecai understood all the 70 languages. We learned that earlier, right? He was part of the Sanhedrin. He was a humongous person, right? And so he's under this, he's looking out for Esther. So he's hanging around the king, the kingdom, the courtyard, this. He's just like there. And so he hears these people plotting to kill the king. And he says, and they don't even think he knows. They think, this Jew, what does he know? He doesn't know what we're speaking. He says they are ignorant to the fact that Mordecai was a member of the Sanhedrin. And such, he knew all the 70 languages of the world, and thus their own tongue betrayed them to their ruins. However, Mordecai had no need to make use of his great knowledge of languages. He obtained his information about the plot of the two chamberlains through a prophetic channel. Accordingly, he appeared one night in the palace, and by a miracle, the guard at the gate had not seen him, and he could enter unrestrained. And he overheard the conversation of the two conspirators. Mordecai Mordecai had more than a single reason for preventing the death of Ahasuerus. In the first place, he desired to secure the king's friendship to the Jews, and especially his permission for the rebuilding of the temple. Then he feared if the king was murdered immediately after his rise to to a high place in the state, the heathens would assign as the cause of the disaster his connection with the Jews, his marriage with Esther, and appointed of Mordecai to officials. All right. So he says Esther convinced Mordecai's pity Esther's confidence in Mordecai's pity was so great that she unhastingly gave credence to the message she received from concerning the mischief of the plot that hatched against the king. And she believed that God would execute the wishes of Mordecai. And he says, albeit and Abimelech and the Tishon had no plans of the sort attributed to them by their uncle, but they would conceive them now in order to make Mordecai's words true. So that's very interesting. Okay, let's keep going. So he says that Esther's confidence was so justified, appeared at once. The conspirators got wind of their betrayal to the king, and in a good time they removed the poison they had already placed in Ahasuerus' cup. And but that the lie might not be given to Mordecai, God caused the poison to appear where there had none been, and the conspirators were convinced of their crime. So this is like miracles that we don't even understand. Like basically, a lot of times, you see in our society, there's a very big issue with male leadership, right? Where we don't trust men leadership, men are misogynists, men are all these different things, and that's created a culture where women have become more masculine, right? And a lot of it's a lot of men are at fault. Men have lowered their morality in many ways, and it's a lot of factors. Okay, societies push different things, but the thing is like this: when we say that a woman should follow a man's leadership, the man that she's married to, her husband, she should follow his leadership. It's not because everything he says is 100% right, even though he may think it's right. It's not that it's 100% right. But when the woman trusts the man's leadership and she follows his leaderships and she listens to his wisdom, they become one soul, and God will alter the universe to fit the words of the husband. God will create that, even if he's wrong. She said, okay, we need to go. The husband says, go left. We can go left. The wife completely believes in her husband, completely believes in her husband. God will change the coordinates of the world for that light to now that left is the right way to get there. And I remember even as a kid, seeing like I remember we wake up. My parents, were Muslim, so we would wake up early in the morning and pray every morning. Me, the sibling, it was like I'm telling you, it was like I couldn't take it. It was like every morning we waking up 6 in the morning. This is my whole childhood. But I remember at the end of when we would pray, my dad would always give like like a little like talk or whatever. And I just remember looking back as a child and seeing my mom so enamored and so like mesmerized by everything my dad was saying. It made me believe in it. You know what I mean? I was like, hey, So when the wife trusts her husband and she trusts the husband's leadership, not that he's a genius, not that he has all the answers, but because he's purified himself and and this is the message that God is giving them. And so because of that mechanism, God changes the coordinates. And so this is the mechanism of Esther and Mordecai. That union of masculine and feminine is being expressed here to the point that God is changing things. And that's what we're watching. Okay. So it says that Esther's confidence was so justified, appeared at once that the conspirators got wind of their betrayal to the king, and in their good time they removed the poison. They say, "Hey man, they figured us out, man. Let's get out of this." And he says, already placed in the cup, and he says so now that the story is getting out, and they heard about it, that they would change. But he says even then, God changed the drinks that there was poison in it. And the king waters, and the king had waters analyzed, which he has given to drink, and in it manifested continents of poison. And he says in other evidence, besides the existence against the two plotters, it established that both at the same time bust themselves into the bust themselves about the person of the king, and through the regulations of the palace assigned definite hours of service to the different to the service of the service to the different from to the one different from those assigned to others, and it made it clear that they intended to perpetrate a dark deed in common. And the two conspirators were sought to escape the legitimate punishment for their dastardly deeds, and by ending their own lives. But their intention was frustrated, and they were nailed to the cross. Ooh, they're nailed to the cross. JC, JC. Anyways, so all right, so this is something, getting nailed to the cross is something that has existed many times in our history. And so anyway, so we're going to go a little bit more into this idea of the conspirators of the conspirators this conspiracy, right? Because we have to understand, like, this is the idea of this whole conversation of Purim, right? This whole conversation of Purim is seeing the amalgamation of all these things that have happened, right? All these things that have happened over a process, right? And this process that everything has happened over is all the byproduct of God. In step by step, but it doesn't mention God. Now, why is that important? It's important because this is the process of our lives, right? The story of Purim is our life. We're all going to be redeemed, every one of us. But there's a process on how we get there. And that process is expressed through seasons. Some seasons it's spring, some season it's summer, some seasons it's I mean, what's the difference between summer? Is winter, and then some places have autumn. I don't know if Israel has so much autumn, but the point is just saying that we have 4 seasons. We have 4 New Years, right? And all of these New Years matter, right? All New Years matter, right? And so that's what we're getting to in this conversation, is being able to say, like, hey, you know what? This story of Purim is not separate than me. It's not that. So if the story of Purim is not separate than me, that would mean that the same technology that applies to the Jews in Sushan Purim applies to me in 2025, meaning that the same days of holiness that they had then is the same days of holiness now. And in the same way that the Jews of that time had the ability to shift the decree and receive the Torah in a new way, so do I. So do I. He said the conspiracy of Bid Ta'an and Teresa, whatever. I can't say it. Determined the king never again to have two chamber guards in his person. Henceforth, he would entrust his safety guard to a single person, and he appointed Haman. Haman! Da, 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 da. It was in place, this evil guy. So he says, appointed Haman to the plow. So this was the act of ingratitude towards Haman, to Mordecai. who, as the king's savior, had most um, cogent claims upon the post. But Haman possessed one important advantage. He was the owner of great wealth, which, with the exception of Korach, he was the richest man that had ever lived, and for he had appropriated himself he appropriated to himself the treasures of the Judean kings of the temple. So he was stealing, right? He was stealing. He stole from the Jews. Ahasuerus had an additional reason for distinguishing Haman. Yet he was well aware of Mordecai's inherent desire to see the temple restored, and he instinctively felt he could not deny the wish of the man who had snatched him from his imminent death, for he had not prepared and granted to it. For he escaped the dilemma and endeavor to make Haman act as a counterpost against Mordecai, that one would build up and the other might pull down. So he was trying to create infighting, right? He was trying to create infighting Ahasuerus, and he said, "Hey, let this guy who's an anti-Semite fight against a Jew, and they'll duke it out, and I'll get pleasure from it." Ahasuerus had long acquainted with Haman's feeling against Jews, and when the quarrel about the rebuilding of the temple broke out between the Jews and their brethren, the heathen adversity, and the sons of Haman denounced the Jews before Ahasuerus. The two parties at the odds agreed to send each other a representative to the king to advocate his case. Mordecai was appointed to the distinguished delegate, and no more rapid Jew hater could be found than Haman to plead the case of the agnostics of the temple builders, the antithesis, sorry, whatever, people were against the temple being built. For his character too, the king Ahasuerus had an occasion to see it in a true light, because Haman is but another name for Memucan, the prince who, chargeably in the last resort with the death of Vashti, at the time of the king's wrath against the queen. I can't say these names. What are these names? He says, was the lowest in ranks among the seven princesses of Persia. Yet arrogant as the princess, not princess, prince in Persia, yet as arrogant he was the first to speak up when the king put his question about the punishment due to Vashti, and it illustrated as the popular Adad. Ad age. The common men rushed to the front. Haman's hostility towards Vashti is dated from her banquet in which the queen failed to abide his wife as a guest. Moreover, he had once insulted. Moreover, she had once. So he hated Vashti. So when you go back into the other classes, you'll see that Ahasuerus went wild, and he decided to take his wife out, and he sought counsel, and a lot of people told him it was the right thing to do. But then he was like really drunk, and he made the wrong decision. But then when he came sober, he realized, and he wanted to kill. And he killed all the people who told him this. And so part of some of the people who told him this were people connected to Haman. Haman's Hatui, he says, so Haman had issues with Vashti. Moreover, since she insulted him by striking a blow in his face, besides, Haman calculated if only Vashti's Rashi's repugnation could be brought about, he might succeed in marrying his own daughter to the king. So he wanted her out, and he said that he was not only disappointed. He was not the only disappointed man at the court. A part of the conspiracy of Bid Ta'an and Teres was a measure of revenge against Ahasuerus for having made the choice of Esther instead of a kinswoman of their heirs. Ahasuerus will have made. Okay. All right. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of politics here. And again, you have to go back. Esther once married to the king. However, once Esther was married to the king, however, Haman made the best of a bad bargain, and he tried every means in his power to win the friendship of the queen, whereby she was a Jewess, she was a Judas or a heathen. She desired a claim kingship with her as a Judas through the fractional bond between Esau and Jacob, as a heathen, easily enough for all of the heathens were alike to one another. All right, it's a lot of stuff, and I'm going through it, but I want to just like kind of reflect with you guys for a second, and like, what do you guys think? What are your thoughts, reflections?
All right. Okay, so first, just kind of going back to the conspirators. Um, I find it interesting, when we talk about like the how they tried to remove, how they literally removed the poison from the cup, and they was, that like they had changed their minds, right? But then Hashem miraculously caused the poison to be back in the water, right? That made me think about that. Even though they tried to like change it, their intentions were still recorded in heaven, in the heavens. It's kind of like that they intended to do evil, but they didn't repent of the evil. They just felt like they was about to be caught, and so they tried to like fix it really quickly. But it still was written in heaven. It was still like like, and it made me think about like coveting. When you covet, they wanted to kill the king, because I mean they didn't want him to be king. They didn't want they wanted somebody else to be king, or they wanted power, or whoever was funding them desired not only to have the kingdom, but also they wanted Ahasuerus. They wanted him dead. And so with that, thank you, baby. So with that, it's like their intentions were still manifested. It was like too late. It was already, the evil was already done. You know, and and I'm gonna let my wife say something because I want to. You have anything you want to say? No. Okay, well, also just to kind of just this whole dealing with the story of Esther. This Shabbat, um, got up and just doing some reflection, saying, you know what, I'm gonna. This was like early Shabbat morning, early, sun wasn't up, and I said, I'm just gonna just meditate on the story of Esther and Mordecai. I'm gonna focus my mind and put my mind on it, and it's like, it's like it just came to me, whereas like, wow, this is really a letter to God's people, a letter to God's people. Um, the whole story is a letter to God's people, because you can feel, what better story to write to a people that may be feeling like, is God even there? Is God even there? You know, is he there? We're listening to Chief Rabbi Pincus, and he made a comment about whenever people look at the Bantu people, uh, saying, wow, man, it looks like their God is not even with them. Like, where's your God at? You got transatlantic slave trade, you got all the problems in South Africa, you got all the problems in the Congo, hunger, famines, and all these different things. And yet these people are still praying, like, where's their God? And when you think about Mordecai and Esther, they were in a serious situation, but then you don't readily hear about their God. You don't hear his name. You don't hear anything about him, but he's working it out on their behalf. And so that's my reflection for what we're in now. Oh no, so that's all. But you, Rabbi, you there? I think you may be muted.
You hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. So Chief Rabbi Pinchas did an amazing job of explaining the whole dynamic between the decree that went out to all the people and the good news that went out, from Mordechai that we learned about with the Mishalach Manot. He said went out to 127 provinces, and those provinces that they went through were all throughout Africa, right? Not limited. So it went to a lot of places, and it went as far as Ethiopia. So it was a lot of connections to that, and I mean, Rabbi Pinchas is like he's carving out that reality of connection. Chief Rabbi Pinchas is building the mechanism that really builds the connection between the land of Israel and the diaspora, right? And he's there for that, and he's doing it, and we're all, all a part of it. And this is just, another thing. So definitely, his shirim are extremely important to study and to analyze and to reflect upon, and from there, we're here right now. All right, so let's go a little bit further, and we're going to continue going on this process. Okay. Whoa. Okay. Hey. Okay. So Mordecai's pride. So when Achashverosh rose Haman to a high office, he at the same time issued the order that all who saw him were to prostrate themselves before him and pray him in the divine. So this is part of Achashverosh creating mischief, right? He knew there's going to be some type of pushback to make it manifest that the homage due to him had an idolatrous character. Haman had an image of a idol fastened to his clothes, so that whoever bowed to him before him worshipped an idol at the same time. Mordecai alone Mordecai alone of all the court refuses to obey this royal order. The highest court officials, even the most exalted judges, showed Haman the reverence abided by the king, and the Jews themselves entreated Mordecai not to call forth the fury of Haman and cause the ruin of Israel thereby. Mordecai, however, remained steadfast, not persuaded. No, there's no persuasion could move him from the moral and the tribute to divinity. So Mordecai didn't bud. The people of his generation said, "Hey, you know what? It's the laws of the land. We don't want problems by these people. Just go along with it." And Mordecai was like, "Absolutely not." Also, the servant of the king who sat at the gate of the royal palace said to Mordecai, wherein thou be better than we should prostrate and pay reverence to Haman and prostrate ourselves, and thou does not all commandments us in the matter. And Mordecai responded. So the guy said, "You're better than us. You don't have to respond. We are doing it, bro. Go along with the flow. Why are you creating problems?" Mordecai answered, "Oh yea, without understanding, hear yet my words, and make me reply thereon." I don't know this old English stuff, right? But anyways, who is the man that he should be act proud and arrogant? Who is man that should act proudly and arrogantly? Man born of a woman in a few days. At his birth, there was weeping and traveling, and in his youth pains and groans, and all the days were full of troubles. And in the end, he returned into dust, before which I should posture myself. So he's saying, like, what do you mean I should posture myself in front of this man? It's like it's not just a man, right? Let's take ourselves out of this concept of the story and say the principle. Why am I bowing down to this information that has no substance? Why am I subjugating myself to the ways of this world that would never lead me anywhere? Why am I doing it? Why are you telling me I should bow down to it? I shouldn't have critical thinking. I should say, hey, you know what? The university system is nice, and maybe I could get a job through status, but at the end of the day, it doesn't do anything for me and my soul. All the materialism that they want me to buy doesn't do anything for my soul. All the status and achievements that they want me to pursue does nothing for my soul. So why are you doing this to me? So Mordecai's asking the same question. I bend the knee before God alone, and only the living one in the heavens, who is the fire consuming all fires, who holds the earth in his arms and stretches out the heavens in his might, and whose darkness in the sun when it pleases him, who darkens the sun when he pleases him, and illuminates the darkness, and commands the sand to set bounds on the seeds unto the seas. And he who has the water of the sea, and he who made the water of sea salt, and causes its waves to spread an aroma of wine, who chained the sea as with the manacles, and held in the fast of the depth of the abyss. And it might overflow the land, and it raises limits that it cannot pass them. With his words that created the firmament, which stretches out like a cloud in the air, and in the case over the world like a dark vault, like a tent that spreads over the earth, and in his strength, and he upholds all that above and below, and the sun and the moon, and it runs before him, and the stars and the planets are not idle for a single moment. They not rest, and they speed before him and his messengers, and going to the right, to the left, and to do his will, and to create them. To praise him before him, we must prostrate ourselves. The court the court official sparked and said, "Yet we know that thy ancestors Jacob prostrated themselves before Haman's ancestor Asaph." Whoa, whoa! So that's a big concept, no? We saw Jacob. Jacob comes along and says, "No, I'm going to bow down to Asaph because I want to create peace." Asaph happens to be the great somebody of Haman. He says, and Mordecai replied, he says, I'm a descendant of Benjamin, who was not born yet when his father Jacob, and his brothers cast themselves upon the earth before Esau. My ancestors never showed such an honor to a mortal. And therefore it was Benjamin allotted the land in Palestine, privileged to contain the temple, the spot where Israel and all the people of the earth prostrated themselves before God, belonging to him who had never prostrated himself before mortal man. And therefore I would not bend my knee before this sinner Haman, this Rasha. He says, and though cast myself into the earth before him. Haman at first tried to, but he tried to get Mordecai into it by showing him by Mordecai of a show of modesty. As he thought that he did not notice the behavior of Mordecai, he approached him and he saluted him with the words, "Peace be upon thee." But Mordecai bluntly replied, "There's no peace, saying my God, with the wicked." The hatred of Mordecai cherished by Haman was due to more than just this hereditary enmity between them and the descendants of Shaul and Agag. Not even Mordecai's public refusal to pay homage to Mordecai suffice to explain its virtue. Mordecai was aware of a certain incident in the past of Haman. If he had divulged it and betrayed, it would have been the most painful to the latter. This account is for the most intensely of his feelings. It once happened in the city of India. It once happened the city of India rebelled against Ahasuerus, and a great hastened troops dispatched under the command of Mordecai and Haman. It was estimated that the campaign would require 3 years, and all the preparations were made accordingly. And by the end of the first year, Haman had squandered the provisions inlaid in the supplies of the part of the army commanded by him. And for the whole term of the campaign, greatly embarrassed, he requests Mordecai to give him aid. Mordecai, however, refused him such support, and they had and they both had been granted the same amount of provisions from for an equal number of men. Haman then offered to borrow from Mordecai and pay him interest. This too Mordecai refused to do for the two reasons: if Mordecai had supplied Haman men with provision, his own would have been suffered, and for the interest the law prohibited, saying, unto thy brother I should not lend usury. And Jacob and Esau, respectively, respective ancestors, Mordecai and Haman, have been brethren. It's interesting. Keep making that connection between Esau and Yaakov. When the starvation started to face the troops of Haman, the troops commanded by Haman threatened him with death unless he gave the relations Haman gave resort to Mordecai to promise to pay him as as 10% interest. The Jewish general concluded to refuse the offer, but he professed himself willing to help him out of his embarrassment on one condition: that Haman sell himself to Mordecai as a slave. Driven into a corner, he acquiesced, and he concentrated, and the contract was written upon Mordecai's kneecap, because there was no paper on to be found in the camp. And the bill stated like this: I, Haman, the son of Hamaditiah, the family of Agada, was sent by King Ahasuerus to make war upon the Indian city with an army of 600,000 soldiers, furnished with necessary provision, precisely the same commission that was given to Mordecai, the son of Shimei, the tribe of Benjamin. But I squandered my provision entrusted to me by the king, so I have no rations for my troop until I desired to borrow from Mordecai on interest. But I have regard to the fact that Jacob and Esau were brothers. He refused to lend him on usury, and I was forced to sell myself into slavery to him. And if now I should do anything, if I should at any time decline to serve him as a slave, or deny that I'm a slave, or if my children, or the children unto him at the end of time should refuse to do him service, if only a single day of the week, or if I should act inimically towards him on the account of this contract, as Esau did towards Jacob after selling his birthright. In all these cases, that the beams of the wood will be plucked out of the house of the recondescendant, and he is to hang out upon them. So you should be hung. And he says, and I, Haman, the son of Hamadan, and the family who had under no restraint, do I thereby consent my own will and bind myself to the slave in perpetuity to Mordecai, in accordance with the content of this document. Later, when Haman attained this high rank, as stated, Mordecai whenever he met him, was in the habit of sketching out his need towards him, so that he might see the bill of sale, so this enraged him against Mordecai and against the Jews, and in that he resolved to destroy the Jewish people. So that brings us in the game, right? That brings us in the game. What are your thoughts?
First thought, Mordecai had a big need.
Yeah,
but I could see, this aspect of Mordecai saying, look, I see you got promoted, but remember, and he put that knee out there,
that knee.
and the knee, but hey, take a knee. Take a knee. But the idea is that I love the fact that Mordecai, it's interesting that sometimes your own people will say, hey, like, look, man, look, don't ruffle their feathers, man, don't push the envelope. And it's like, no, I'm not pushing any envelope. I have a standard. And that standard, I'm not about to, lower my standard
Yeah.
because of what they're doing. Now this back history about, this is my first time ever hearing this. This back history about this, that Haman was Mordecai's slave, and and just the relationship between Jacob and Esau. It's like a retelling of the story that no matter what, Esau cannot get away from this mindset that you are subservient to Jacob.
Yep.
And no matter in what situation or what place we're in, Esau must that agreement is going to be honored with Hashem. That he's going to make that relationship be honored. And that kind of leads me back to what I was saying about about their intentions. Their intention was to kill the king, and so they put the poison there. And so even though they put the poison there, it's still going to be honored. It's still going to be dealt with. Like you can't just come back and say, hey, I'm not going to do it. You had an opportunity not to put the poison and say, you know what, man, this is wrong. We're not going to poison the king. Man, you know what, man, hey, just get rid of it.
Yeah.
We're not doing it. But they did it. They made the agreement. And here it is that it has to be, you got it, man, you got to keep your word. It's going to be lived out. So, it's just interesting that Mordecai is, just, like, so this has been a feud that's been going on between Haman and Mordecai for some time that is not just starting,
Yep.
You want to say something?
No, it's good. I'm just enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it.
Okay, so let's keep pushing. So if you guys are open, I want to at least get another class in, tomorrow because it's going to be a little bit hectic over on the fast day. Maybe we can learn the fast day. That would be actually very good too. But let's keep it open because I don't know if I have to be in shul, how long I'm gonna be there. This is a whole big thing, right? So we're gonna see by that. But let's learn tomorrow. We're gonna finish. We'll finish something. I don't know if it's gonna be this part or we'll go into the Zohar because we got so much work to do. But yeah, we're in it, man. We're in Purim. We're in that situation and that light, and it's powerful. But please, if you guys could look back over the classes earlier today, I did 2 earlier today, all Purim, all day. And just go back over those classes because I go through those stories in more details. And we'll be able to see. And the really important one is that I did earlier with Otinel, which is about the Seder itself, the Purim Seder, and I go through all the complexities because Achashverosh had well, I mean not Seder, Suda, the meal for Purim, All right, so let's do this. Let's end the class here, and then tomorrow. What is this? What is that? Megillah Esther. There you go. There it is. There it is. There it is. You got to honor the women. You can't say we got a whole sefer named after women. They just say, hey, Esther, not Mordecai, Esther. All right, so let's go in this thing tomorrow. We're going to keep pushing this tomorrow. Shavua Tov, we just less ego, more love, more unconditional love, more acts of unconditional kindness. Go ahead. We're gonna go over the half shekel and everything tomorrow too.
Yeah, Shavua Tov.
All right, so we're good. So we'll go over the half shekel, everything tomorrow. We'll just send it because you just send it to me everything, all the different rabbinit, not rabbinit. This is one, all the rabbanim that are around the world. Everyone in those locations are sending to us. So the people in North America are sending by me. People in different places in Africa are sending. So it was whatever it is, just send it, and everything will be worked out with Rabbi Pinchas. And then when he does whatever different connections he does, your family will be added to it. Your family name and all those meditations that he does for the collective community. So we're going to make sure of that. So just in whatever, and then but tomorrow we'll go into more details on that, and just going into the details on what needs to happen and making sure we're prepared and everything connected to that.
Yeah, amen.
Okay. All right. Shavua Tov, Baruch Atah Adonai Le'olam. Amen.